What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. I am, of course, your host, your bastard of ceremonies, Reckless Rexx Ruger. That, if you couldn't tell by those enormous chompers, is, of course, the Freddie Mercury puppet. We're back with another amazing episode, and you might also know me as, at least you should, one Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. Take a look. It should be evident to anybody's eyes that you were looking at the son of glam, the front man for the band, adored by millions of fans, the peanut butter to your jam. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Wop, bop, loo, bop, wop, bam, bam, shazam, hot damn. Whew. Glad I got that out of my system, man. Feeling good, no doubt, no doubt. Thanks to Pop's great genetics. Absolutely no doubt, looking good. But of course, as I said, I've got the unfair advantage. I've got the old man's genes, rock star genes. And as I always say, don't hate, congratulate. It's not my fault, folks. I mean, you can't blame me for these rock star good looks. That being said, let me get my obligatory promos out of the way. And of course, I'm looking over here to see if my guest is in touch with me. You know, don't edit anything, can't be bothered with it, will not be bothered with it. Life is happening and it must be recorded as it happens for posterity's sake. Mistakes and all, warts and all, it all gets documented here on the program. Get my promos out of the way, of course, make sure to like and follow on PodScum. Follow PodScum. I've had a long day at work, folks. Please, bear with me. Just got out, work in healthcare, running all day long. But I digress. Make sure to like and follow PodScum on Facebook, is what I meant to say. Tripping over my tongue a little bit there, but now that I got that out, and the Freddie Mercury puppet, of course, knows a little something about tripping on his words. Try spitting out words through those teeth. That being said, let me also remind you to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay tapped in to the best conversations anywhere. This is where the cool kids come to chop it up with your boy, Rexx Ruger, and one of them is here right now. Let's get down to business. I'm excited. You're excited. We're excited. Joe!
Hey, how you doing?
Nice to have you on here, man. Thank you for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. Now you're already laughing, and I'm wondering, is it the David Lee Roth hair? Is it the whole get up? Because what I'm trying to achieve here, through the courts and the legal system here, is to try to once and for all prove that I am the DNA of Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. And should I be able to, and should I be able to coerce you into saying that you see the resemblance? I may quote you, maybe even subpoena you.
I don't know.
So you don't see the resemblance?
No, I'm laughing because you're basically screaming as soon as you come on the screen. You're fucking yelling at me. I just had a lesson, so I was just on Skype with somebody, and it was definitely a different energy. So I'm just laughing. That's great.
Yeah, a lot of energy. I try to bring a lot of energy, Joe. I probably should have forewarned you and maybe had you, maybe load up on your caffeine.
It's working. It's working.
Yeah, good. And as I said, really, truly honored to have you here, man. I usually like to start these things and kind of go back to the beginning, and you've got such a rich history, in the music industry, man. Where did it start for you? Was there a specific album or a song or an artist that really lit the fire for you to do music?
Yeah, it's a couple of things, because it was definitely to really get engaged with music was hearing Otis Redding when I was about 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And that made me seriously start looking into all this basically Black American music, where I got into James Brown and Parliament and Funkadelic and everything but Sly, which led to Larry Graham, because he had come through DC with his band, and it's a strange band, Graham Central Station, in a way, because they're like a high energy gospel band in a way, but they're just hard to pinpoint, and they sound very of that time now,
right?
You know? But that was a big band for me because of shows they did locally. They played a show that Sly and the Family Stone canceled. Graham Central Station was opening, and Sly just wouldn't come out, and so they had to keep playing. And this was my best friend's older brothers were at that show, and we were already into the band. We were just too young to get into them, to see them, I mean. And that made them sort of local heroes. So they were played more on the radio after that, because he held the audience. He kept the audience entertained.
Right.
a show that he was not supposed to be headlining. You know what I mean? He played hours.
Yeah. And did you ever get to the bottom? Did you ever get to the bottom of that show as to why Sly wouldn't come out?
No, I'm sure that it was just one of the many shows that like drugs started taking over.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
This is about 1972 or 73.
Whoa! I wasn't going to make you date yourself, Joe. Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
Yeah. I saw because I saw them play, and I think it was 74.
Yeah.
When I saw them, but I had seen bands before that in like 73 to 74. I saw like the Spinners and the Four Tops and the OJs, Jackson 5 and the Isley Brothers. They were afternoon shows that a young person could go.
Like matinees. Yeah. I remember even like the old hardcore matinees. You know what I mean? Like those used to be great, you know?
Right.
I mean, I'm in upstate New York, so they used to have them here. I'm more in the neck of like Syracuse, but I know like CBGB's. I mean, a Sunday afternoon was you know, a big deal.
Right. That's like, it's such a different thing socially because it's just not at night and you don't have to like get at it that way. You can do the show, talk to people, and you can actually do something after it.
Right.
It's a whole different thing. But then later when punk comes along, I always point to Pink Section because there were two guys and two girls, and they clearly didn't have total mastery of their instruments, but they were making what I thought was really interesting music.
Yeah.
They were a San Francisco band that was on a compilation called Live at the Deaf Club. And that was music that was done in a deaf club in San Francisco that hosted punk shows.
Oh, that's cool.
So there was not only Pink Section, but Tuxedo Moon and the Dead Kennedys. And all of this was punk music to me. I didn't understand that the Dead Kennedys were like a hardcore band. I didn't even understand hardcore yet.
Right.
So I just, because I was in Rockville, Maryland, not DC, I was not picking up on all the things that were really happening there. And I was seeing more like national acts come through.
Right.
You
Right.
know? But then eventually I'm like, all these kids at shows are in bands and putting out their records. Like it blew my mind. But Pink Section is a big band for that. But then I pick up the bass really because of Public Image and Joy Division.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they kind of show me the role of the bass in song.
Yeah.
And then I'm totally encouraged, like, don't know what I'm doing. And I proceed to not even bother trying to find out what I'm doing until, after Fugazi.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I find great about Fugazi, and I want to get your opinion on this, if any band was walking the walk of the punk rock ethos, it was you guys, man. I mean, keeping, fighting to keep ticket prices low, just your whole DIY attitude, the whole core of what you guys did. Do you think that ethos, I know there's bands now, there's always people that are going to try to carry that punk rock, torch. But do you think that ethos and that attitude can exist, in today's music world with all the advances in technology? And I know the music business is tough right now, but in a lot of ways, it's much easier to create music. Like technology has a big, a big hand in doing that kind of stuff. But do you think that general ethos? And I've had this conversation with New York hardcore guys too. The Agnostic Fronts, the Sick of It Alls of the world, kind of born and bred in that, that Lower East Side. Is that just a snapshot in time, or can that exist today?
I think like that music, which didn't, I liked the variations of bands that were involved in what was called hardcore. And I liked the Bad Brains and Black Flag and the Minutemen. And, they're very choice bands that were very different from each other.
Right.
But the overall, like, every band sounds the same kind of thing. Now that is a strange thing for someone like me who wanted to hear things, change and progress. But for young kids, I've noticed that music is there. It's like garage punk. It's like there's that music for people to gather, to write, and go put on shows and actually understand all this about themselves and gather as a community. So I think the same way that music is there for that, I think the way people end up treating that, like, well, where are we going to meet? Where are we going to put on a show?
Right.
And everything that you can basically manage to navigate on your own in that DIY kind of ethos, I think you're going to find people can do that, because of course kids who are doing that, they're not going to make it so expensive that they can't get into their own show.
Right.
Like, it was their idea,
Right.
So I think that's and to me, that's the nature of all that, is that you're learning about a new way to gather and create something that gives you something to do, because you're, come on. There, society has all these sort of venues for you to go down. And if you're not into sports, and,
Right.
and you're not, you know what I mean? You're looking for the other kids who also don't understand this.
Sure.
And so you gather through that music. So I think to a degree it can happen. But the music business itself, yes, has so absolutely been totally trashed, and people trying to rebuild it and whatever it is. I mean, I'm not doing it. I'm not even focused on only playing, all ages shows, because pursuing music that isn't the band I was in 40 years ago. And I don't have a built-in audience as Joe Lally, the bass player from Fugazi. I don't.
Right.
500 people will not come out and see me in any given city. That's just a fact.
Right.
So
Right.
what I am doing is difficult. I'm starting over. I'm about to turn 61, and the bands that I'm doing and the ideas that I have, I'm working with a viola player. I want to hear this other music that's
Yeah.
in my mind, and it's like strings, and I want to hear it with like cello and viola and bass, and I want to make that music. But people aren't going to come like rushing out to see it. So
Right.
if I only play in all ages shows, well, I mean, like, I could just mind my own business and just play on the street. You know what I mean?
Busk. You could be out there busking. I don't want to see Joe, the bass player from Fugazi, out there busking. Hopefully it doesn't have to come to that.
I always wanted to do that, to experiment, to test.
Yeah.
But you can do that in open mics too.
But those people always look like they're having a ball.
Well, because they're free,
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
playing for people. That's why I write songs, to play them to people.
Yeah.
And that is it. That is the top.
Yeah.
I have reached my goal. The thing is that I'm not satisfied like by a song. I have to write the next one.
Yeah.
The thing, and so that goes on forever. The other things that people think are involved in playing in bands and playing in some venue or reaching some album sales or something, those have, to me, that has nothing to do with it.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm curious to know, because you are saying about creating music. Well, when you're going to sit down and write music, whether it's lyrics or music or whatever, what kind of creative person are you? Like I talk to a lot of musicians on here, and commonly I always hear people getting ideas in the car. They're saying them into their phone, or they're jotting them down, or they're getting them at their day job. Or you've got your creative types that can sequester themselves into a room and say, I'm going in there and I'm going to create music. But for you, what's the process like?
I really do make the time and say, like, this is a free time. This is a free moment. There are lessons at this part of the day and that part of the day, and every day is different. And if I can sneak in between where I know my morning is free or a certain part of the afternoon is free, I'll either try forwarding ideas that I've already started, or I just pick up the bass and play. But that can happen at any moment through the day. I literally keep basses in different parts of the house so I can pick up a bass and play. But what I do is I just grab my phone and make that thing that I'm not going to remember that way.
Right.
I put it on the phone so I can remember it. And there is a lot of listening to the phone going, what am I doing?
Yeah, what was it?
It just sounds like dum 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 dum. And it's like, what the fuck is that? But I have to say, I believe in the process of, if you got up this morning, there's a chance that you can write something. I'm not waiting for any, specific thing to come to me. It's like, it's just the more you do it, the better you get at it. So it's like you just keep reaching for sounds, and you just pick up your bass and play, because you have to. I'm like, connected to that sound, so I just pick it up and I want to hear it. So.
And now, what did draw you to the bass? Because a lot of times when people are getting into instruments, obviously, especially at a young age, you get guys who, or kids, who like the glorious position of being the front man or the lead singer. What I mean? Sometimes the bass and the drums aren't seen as glamorous.
Well, it's right. It's what I heard, and I think we're drawn to the frequency that we're connected to, and I just.
Yeah.
There's a little dub thing for you. You know what I mean? Any
Yeah.
little, those sounds though, those are particular sounds and you can't get them from guitar. They're not the same on piano, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. You know what I mean? And so you find yourself like connecting in things that you're hearing. And I think hearing the way it was so in your face in Public Image that the bass line wouldn't even change.
So you felt that instrument was calling to you.
Yeah, that was where I was like, whoa, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that suddenly made it suddenly opened, or the light came in to say, oh, I could see the through line back to R&B and soul and funk. And then of course when you got into punk, I heard on local radio, I heard reggae shows and dub shows. And so I suddenly was like, and so I understood the connection of Public Image and dub music, but it also just opened up that idea, because now it's not just music from Jamaica or some alien culture to me, but it's mixed into this idea of rock and even punk.
Yeah.
So suddenly it all made sense to me as an instrument. Then you just hear differently. Once that your instrument has grabbed you, then you start hearing it in all the songs. You're just like, oh, that's what the bass is doing in that song. You know, you just.
And I'm curious with the MESSTHETICS. When you do just a band that's just doing instrumental, do you do something like that? Does that kind of scratch a different itch for you? Not having lyrics and not having words involved in it. Is it a different kind of creative outlet?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have to admit that I did play my solo music where I'm leading a band. I'm writing what I think of as the core of the music. The foundation of the song is going to be my bass line and the words that I've written. So it's like storytelling music. And I heard that in myself after the Fugazi stopped playing, and I had to figure out how to do that. So I worked on that. Then I went out and played all over the place that I could. And I put out 3 records of that. And I literally exhausted that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't as happy with the lyrics I was writing. This was about storytelling. And I said what I needed to say. And then I started writing things that were not making me happy. I was like, these are bumming me out. And I have a responsibility not to just bum people out, but to give them something to think about.
Right.
And I felt that my songs had done that. And now I was just not satisfied. And so I started making this other music. I was living in Italy at this time because we raised my daughter in Rome, where my partner is from. And I had been out playing and stuff, but now I decided I was going to stay because I did a lot of traveling while we lived there. And now I was just going to stay there. And I started writing and trying to hear what music was now at that point. And I found that I wanted to make instrumental music, and I got together with people and I recorded things, but it was always the bass that didn't sound exactly right to me.
Yeah.
I set things in motion, but I'm the weak link in this music that I'm making. I come back to America because we really needed to work, because there was no work for me really in Italy that I could maintain a living there. So we come back and I start to play with Brendan, and I played him that music that I had recorded. And it was full of like people improvising over top of these concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought of Anthony, who I did not know and I had never met because I'd been living away. And he said, this guy would be perfect for this. Let's get together with Anthony. And we were still like just going through my instrumental music, and my solo music. And I was like, wait a minute, why are we doing this with this guy? This guy's fucking unreal. And that led to and some of those things I recorded in Italy, they ended up being like MESSTHETICS songs.
So you were being hard on your own stuff then, kind of.
It just wasn't like I was trying to understand what it was. And it turns out what it needed to be was the MESSTHETICS.
Yeah.
It just became that.
Yeah.
In the things they were looking for and the things I was looking for, that would be the thing that scratched that itch, as you say.
And I also want to ask about, and I don't even know if I'm saying the name of the band right, but CORIKY. CORIKY. I love that album. I think it's beautiful, and I really love the harmonizing in it. The harmonizing is beautiful.
It was really fun to do that because at the same time the MESSTHETICS were starting, I was also going over Ian and Amy's house in the morning. Literally at 8:30 in the morning, we'd get together, and then we would play for like an hour. every like 2 to 3 days a week sometimes. And we did this over like 5 years. And that record came out. But we took 3 years of doing that before the first show.
Right. Do you feel like there'll be more music from that band? Because you've only put out the one album in 2020, correct?
It seems, yeah, they just got involved in, I mean, they're in a different mode. Their son is still in high school, and like my daughter is in graduate school, and they're just in a different place. And I don't know. We never talk about it. I have a feeling that was a project that happened, and it's okay, that it can be that way. I really liked it. I enjoyed it. Ian and Don really worked on how that record sounds. That's why it sounds so great, because they took their time with it, and I think it paid off. It's a beautiful sounding record. But I enjoyed doing that so much because I didn't want to be the person inciting the songs. I didn't want to write the lyrics, but I could add a voice to this harmonizing idea just wherever I literally was able to.
Yeah.
So they could have asked for some things, and I just be like, I cannot sing there. I can't play.
Right. It's beyond my reach.
Everything that happened was because that's where it can happen.
Yeah.
But that makes for like a very specific, it gives you your personality, gives the band its personality,
Yeah.
So, but I enjoyed that a lot. Yeah.
I imagine you've obviously, from a music fan standpoint, you have seen probably, loads and loads of concerts. Is there a live gig that you went to see from a fan standpoint that really stands out, that was really like you were like a bowled over moment?
Oh shit. Yeah. I mean, seeing the Bad Brains is that way. Like anytime I saw the Bad Brains, I had, my friends in the early 80s was a band called The Obsessed. I had gone to art school with the drummer in my high school art class. And they were a really heavy, kind of 70s heavy rock sounding band. And I used to, sit in the basement with them practicing. I mean, I damaged my hearing before I was even in.
Yeah.
But because they were just a loud, really heavy band. But watching them play was really something. And but seeing Iggy Pop in 1980, the first shows I saw was like the B-52s was the first punk show I saw in 1979.
Yeah.
And it fucking was wild.
Yeah.
They sound like almost a comical band at this point. If you think about them in your mind, they're like a cartoon.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, if you saw the early shows, that was intense.
I think the minute you say B-52s, people are probably thinking the Love Shack got people.
That's what I'm saying. You can't believe it. But that Ricky Wilson, there was a pool of sweat on the ground around him. The way you would see Ian years later, Ricky Wilson was like that. He may not even have moved, but he just sat there and fucking worked it the whole time. The girls were dancing. Fred was dancing.
Yeah.
They worked so hard. That was an intense band. I got pulled into the audience, and I was off my feet, and I didn't understand what the fuck was going on. I was being moved around. I got out of there like I was scared. That's a B-52s show.
Yeah.
I was scared.
Yeah.
And then,
scared. You don't hear scared at a B-52 show very often.
I'm serious. And I went that same year, I saw Devo play in Baltimore after the first record came out.
Yeah.
And that was fucking wild. That blew my mind totally. And then I saw The Clash. And then I saw Iggy Pop in 1980. And that stayed with me for years. I was like, what happened at that show?
Yeah. Yeah.
I could not comprehend what I witnessed at that show.
Yeah.
It stayed with me for years. And I realized that what I witnessed at that show is I witnessed like shamanism. I witnessed someone who was capable of transcending, was allowing a group of people to transcend reality.
Right.
So
you feel like you're in the presence of something magical happening. Yeah.
Totally. To enter a non-ordinary state of consciousness by the music, that's not only the music that's being played, but the way he was physically moving in front of us and the way that he dealt with everything that happened.
Yeah.
It's not even explainable.
Yeah.
But there were things that didn't seem possible physically that were going on in the room.
Yeah. I recently saw an interview with Henry Rollins, and I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact question, but I think the guy asked him something to the effect of like, if you could recommend, one important album, one important book, one important film that everybody should, and the album he named was Raw Power by the Stooges. He's like, everybody should hear that album.
It is like that. I played with somebody once in Italy, and she hadn't got down, like, I thought she was a great guitar player, but she hadn't actually played guitar in a band a lot, and I was like, oh, you can do this. I can hear it.
Yeah.
But then when we went to record, there were some things that she couldn't do, like a certain kind of like gung 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 gung, a certain way of like riffing and transmitting this particular sound. And I said, do you know this album? Just go listen to this at least twice a day. It was like a doctor's prescription.
Yeah.
And it was Raw Power.
Yeah.
I was like, this is just going to change the way you think about things and hear things. Just go do this. And I believe that about that record. It's just, there's just something going. I mean, it's a dangerous record too. I almost, fucking overdosed on that record. I mean, I just treated myself really terribly when I really got into that record. I just took things like, I was someone who did that when I was very young, and that was a dangerous period of my life.
Yeah. And now that you're teaching people the bass, what do you find is the one thing that the biggest mistake that people maybe make when they're undertaking learning an instrument?
Well, you were probably able to write before you came to me for lessons. You were able to write riffs. And you can still do that, and it's always going to happen the same way. The thing about learning that I was afraid of when I was in Fugazi, I didn't want to know anymore. I was afraid I would somehow lose the little bit of understanding that I did have about how things were operating. But when I went to teach and when I went to take in more information, because I had to teach myself theory so I could teach it to people, that's how I started to teach.
Right.
I didn't know.
Let me learn this stuff first.
I didn't know what to teach them because I didn't know how I did what I did. I just did it.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit worried about that, but I understood while I was taking it in. I was like, oh, there's a philosopher. I don't know if you've ever heard of Krishnamurti.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So Krishnamurti says that thought is memory. So I say this all the time in my interviews, but I have to because I'm talking about why I think this way and why I thought about saying this to students, but it's literally why. It's because if thought is memory, then thought is connected to organized thinking and rational thinking and study. So it's a study mind. And that is like waking, thinking mind. But outside of thought is when we meditate, it's the practice of not thinking.
Right.
So thoughts become an observable thing that pass, which brings up the observer and the observed thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Where you're like, well, who's observing if I always believed I am the thinker?
Right.
Then who's watching me think because I seem to be watching me think?
Right.
This is a conundrum there.
Yeah.
But what this means about playing and learning is that you can't, so playing mind is intuitive, creative, outside of thought, unconscious, stream of consciousness. When you talk about that, that's all of the creativity thing. It doesn't come from thought. It comes from the things that your unconscious mind throws together to create. That is built on everything you've already known, but you're not consciously aware of where it's coming from.
It's been there though. Yeah.
So there's study mind and playing mind, and they don't really meet because you can't do one well if you keep trying to do the other. So you're not studying if you keep trying to put it in practice. You have to stop and let go.
Yep.
And if you're playing, you can't stop and think because the band's going to keep going without you.
Right.
You can't start going, oh, wait a minute, I know what we're doing. And so, and then the band's...
Right. Hey, you know what? Krishnamurti probably would have made a good music teacher.
Yes. You would have. I think so.
Yeah. And so I want to get back to the Fugazi. It's such an antithesis of what's going on now in the music industry where, I'm wondering if a band like Fugazi started today, would it be difficult or damn near impossible to implement all the things that you guys wanted to do and stand for back then? Because now, obviously, ticket prices, and I do understand that it's a means to an end right now. Bands have to go out and tour. There's no really record industry proper anymore. I mean, touring and selling merchandise is a big part of what they do nowadays. But, would you be able to wave that, that anti-authority flag, as much as you guys were able to back in the day?
Well, when you consider that while we were doing it, people said that we couldn't do it.
Right.
Then I mean, I can't see why it's really that different today.
Because I get a lot of people on here, Joe, that ask me, why do ticket prices have to be so high? And can artists actually go and change and affect ticket prices if they've achieved a certain status in the industry?
And that's, of course, it's a great question. But so what Fugazi was doing is we never took a giant leap. Before we even played, I think, when Fugazi was still coming together, it was just me and Ian trying to find a drummer.
Right.
I'm sure that somebody from Hawaii had contacted him oh, you have a new band? Will you do this hardcore festival? And so we never did anything like that.
Right.
We never took a step ahead of where we were. So Fugazi booked shows that we went out and played and people came to. And if we went to New York to play, we only played Columbia University and universities at first because they would not do the door price. So we were trying to do a $5 show, and the Ron Delsner thing that was controlling New York was like, you're not going to do a $5 show in New York. And we were like, no, we're not going to do a $5 show with you. In New
York. Right. And
that's all that it's just that we never got out of it until a New York promoter, Chris Williamson, said, I want to be the guy who brings Fugazi to a venue in New York. I don't care if I lose money. I make money doing other things. So he did 2 nights at the Marquee for $5. And he lost some money, but they were sold out shows.
Right.
And he loved it. And he just kept trying to find venues for us. And so I'm not sure what this means today. The point is that today, if you're gathering an audience, you're gathering an audience. And what you do by being able to gather that audience and they're paying what you think is a reasonable door price. If you're getting them in and you can get a venue that'll do it,
right,
then it's just a matter of navigating the venues. And that's all we ever did. If they wouldn't play the game, we did not play the game with them.
Right.
Because it was our game. Because we never had to answer to anyone but 4 of us.
Right.
And if you can make that what your band is, then nothing can come into it. So there was no outside force was really going to fuck with us because we were enough of a problem between the 4 of us just to go, how is it going to be? And we all had such opinions about it that we organized the way we were going to act.
It's amazing you were able to do that, though, years ago, because I don't know if you remember, but even somewhere back in the 90s, Pearl Jam tried to take Ticketmaster to task, and they tried to put on shows to independent vendors or whatever, and it fell apart. It was a disaster, but it can be done. You guys have proved it can be done.
It's a really, really hard thing to navigate, especially if you're coming from that world where you actually have this huge audience that so you're not really growing it from the bottom up, and then you are managing the same people in a city, connecting you to a larger and larger venue step by step. It's very hard to work backwards to be a big band that's now going to look for. Those problems I think are just fundamental. They explain why it's hard to do, but it's and we also took issue with the fact that the kids came to the shows and they were just like, well, don't you have anything to sell? And after a while it became such a question. It was just like, well, what if we didn't? Like, are you still going to come see us?
Right.
You know what I mean? And it was a weird thing that we decided that we would confront and not have to worry about. So the reason we could maintain a $5 door is that we did not carry a load of merchandise and we did not carry an extra person that had to be put up every night to sleep.
Right.
That sold that merchandise.
Huge difference. Yeah.
We remained a unit with 2 extra people, a stage tech and a sound man.
Yeah.
And that way they could drive the vehicle that had the equipment and we could be in a minivan. That's all we ever graduated to. We never were in a bus.
So you guys made it as economical as and work as frugal as possible.
So yeah, I mean, if today, if suddenly the MESSTHETICS could draw, 18,000 people, and we could play an arena,
Yeah.
we would definitely go. So can someone bring the PA into that arena?
Yeah.
So can we just pull up in a minivan and load our equipment into the back of that arena?
Yeah.
just to see if it's possible.
And no MESSTHETICS t-shirts.
But there would be no massive show that everybody wants. We just need like the light on us because people like the music. So that was the concept of Fugazi. There was nothing extra. The lights get turned on and you're watching this band play and there's no light show.
Yeah.
There's no merchandise to buy. If you think about it today, you're just like, what kind of fucking show is that?
Right. But in a lot of ways, though, it makes it a great show because you do see a lot of people that are guilty nowadays. And I hear this from a lot of musicians. And I don't know if it's a distraction when they're up on the stage or whatever. I guess it's probably more of a distraction than kids in the 80s holding up lighters during slow songs. But everybody now has the cell phone out. You know what I mean? They're not really there and in the moment.
It's a weird thing to not, I'm at shows and I'm short. So like, I'm not able to see the band because of the fucking phone in front of me.
Right,
That's the fucking drag.
Yeah.
But yeah, the rest of it is just stuff. I mean, like Dylan is being adamant about it, making people check their phone,
Yeah.
And I think it's because his whole idea of the way the human mind works, that guy is not playing around. He's thinking about shit from 400 years ago because that guy studies everything that happened.
And I love that train of thought, though. I love that because I think people are more present. It's stand-up comedian shows, because they don't want the material to leak out. That's usually what they do. They take people's phones and they lock them up so that way that stuff won't leak. So that way someone won't go say, "Oh, I'm not going to go see that show. I saw all his jokes." You know what I mean?
It's amazing. It's something to say. CORIKY played about 12 shows, but we ended up putting up a sign on the way in that was basically people paid a donation. There was no ticket price.
Yeah.
And it said, no one like yourselves, no one outside of this venue has seen what we do.
Right.
So if you don't post it, everyone will come to this show the way you are. And they have no idea what's going to happen.
No preconceived notions, no nothing. Yeah.
And no one ever posted. I don't think anyone ever posted videos of us. There was an understanding and a respect for that that's pretty amazing if you think about it.
Yeah. And did you ever get to the point when you guys were touring a lot? Did touring ever become a part of the business that you ever didn't enjoy? Because I know there's a point in time sometimes when you're away from home, you're away from your creature comforts. I talk about this all the time on here. I mean, I don't tour. I'm not a musician, but I do like coming home from a day at work and kind of, being a homebody. And I imagine, packing up and going for weeks, months at a time. There probably is a romantic side to it and it sounds very fun or whatever. But I imagine though, sometimes it can grate on your nerves, being out for weeks, months at a time.
Yeah, there were long tours, but of course we were always the ones deciding that. But we did do longer ones and it was always 3 weeks to a month. You definitely, and you enter like a loopy sort of a phase in your brain, and then you become a little bit crazy, and so you do kind of want to get back. But what I'm finding out, because again, I'm still doing this. We just did 66 shows this year.
Yeah.
And that's not anywhere near what Buzz is doing in the Melvins still.
Right.
But what I'm saying is I can't even get anyone interested to like book me 66 shows. And so we were lucky that I feel very fortunate I'm in a band that's actually playing that much. And we just did a bunch of dates in Europe and it was only like 3 weeks of shows, but there were too many days off. I don't like days off. I'm out there to work. I want to be getting shit done. You know what I mean? Right. It was beautiful to be able to see things, but it's I gotta bring some money home and pay the bills. And I want to be out working. I want to vacation with my family.
Right. Sure.
I love the guys, but I'm not going to vacation with them.
Right. Right. That's not a vacation.
There's reasons, but I have to say, even now, I will sit. I do not like sitting still. I can't sleep in a van or a plane. I don't sleep sitting in a chair. Yeah. So and I wake up early in the morning. So when I go on tour, I'm actually trying to flip my clock.
Right.
To make that work.
Yeah.
So even with all of that I don't like, clearly there's something wrong with me, because I will still do it to play an hour every night.
Yeah.
I'm just like, well, I just have to live with the fact that that's what I like to do. And if I can't go around and do it, I will figure out a way to keep doing it in this area, as many venues as I can get to. I'll try to play something. And I know that I'll do that, because as time goes on, I'm like, who's going to even give a fuck what I do? I will go play surf music. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I like to play. I just like to play. You know.
And what's the big difference that you see when you do play here in the States as opposed to the European market?
I have to say that it's always been this way. Audiences are audiences. They're either kind of getting down with what you're doing, or, they don't. That can happen anywhere. But
Right.
But I have to say, with this band, with the MESSTHETICS and James Brandon Lewis, what we're presenting to people seems to be something that they're not totally used to seeing. It's not like typical for them, and audiences are really and I only say that because they're reacting the way they do. And
but
they
you are
say,
challenging. I think you are challenging the fans too, though. You know what I mean? Because you are doing something so different.
They're saying, like, I like the record, but this is something else, to see you play it live.
Yeah.
And that means a lot to me. That's great that we wrote music that was interesting to people, and seeing us play it is interesting. And you know what it's just, I'm just happy there's a good reaction, but we're really getting it whether we play in the United States or Europe. So
yeah,
it's kind of great.
Now it seems like it seems to become very prevalent in the music industry, and no matter what genre of music you played, for people to write their memoirs. Is there a memoir in Joe Lally, or is that not an avenue that you would ever take?
If there is, for me, I've only ever been interested in writing about everything that happened before I was in Fugazi.
Okay.
I've never really wanted to try to make any sense. I can't, it's all like one giant recording session and one giant show.
Right.
I don't have that kind of memory.
Yeah.
So there's no way I would get through trying to explain all this crap. But the things in my life that I found, like, if I look back and go, like, I'm really fortunate that I was able to find music, and music was able to sort of save me, because I fucking hated everything. I felt everything that was before me in society that it offered, I didn't understand, I did not like, and I didn't want to be a part of.
Right.
And music helped me find something that, I was just going to be a roadie. I quit a job with great security and benefits, and they kept giving me raises. It was with a government contractor for NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
Yep. Once upon a time. Yep.
and I quit that job.
Yeah.
That was security. In 1986, I left that idea of life to be a roadie.
Yeah. Yeah. You just had you had to immerse yourself in the creative arts, and you had to be around it.
And I saw the United States for the first time, and I was just a roadie in a band. And I still was like, okay, I'll be a roadie. But at least life made sense to me finally. Even if it was on the edge of things and it didn't have, a secure future in it, it was still something to go. It just happened that I came back from that tour. And it was Ian who asked me to be in a band. I didn't expect to be in a band then.
Do you look at music, when you write music, do you look at it as cathartic? Do you think of it as like a form of therapy?
Oh, sure. I do believe, Albert Eiler's, music is a healing force in the universe, for sure. I do believe that everything's vibration. Everything's made up of vibration. And that's what we're doing with music. So yes, we're communicating on the very best level to not just people, but everything. Yeah. So yeah,
I work in healthcare. I work in healthcare. I'm a nurse, is my day job. And in the nursing homes, wherever I've worked, I've always seen that no matter what activities they're putting together for the elderly folks in the activities department, music is always prevalent. They love to bring in musicians and play music, and you really see a change in the reaction of the older people. It takes them back. It gets their feet moving. Sometimes even people that aren't very ambulatory or moving at all, they start to clap, they start to tap. They start to bob their heads a little bit, irregardless of what condition they're in at all, man. Music really has a way of healing. Totally.
It's
amazing.
Are you are you in Syracuse still?
I always say Syracuse. I'm about 30 minutes from Syracuse, but I'm kind of in like a small town. But so I usually say Syracuse because it's the nearest big city to me.
Okay, so in the place where you do your work, will they have people come in and play?
Oh yes, yeah,
So you have to book an afternoon show for the MESSTHETICS.
yeah,
And then we'll play something that, isn't like the most brash, wild thing,
yeah.
but still totally interesting and a little bit easier, so it's not blowing people down. And we'll play there in the
That would be
afternoon
great.
sometime
Yeah,
to do that. That's the kind of thing I would love
yeah.
to do,
And it
honestly.
really just and like these are guys who are like who don't necessarily do this for a career. Like these are guys who just like to who just like to come in and just pluck, and they play some oldies for the people, stuff stuff that resonates with them, that they remember from their generation. I'll still be kind of hustling and busting around the facility finishing up my work, but I'll hear them out in the main dining room, and they'll be running through like Johnny Cash tunes or just like any old stuff that kind of is a callback to stuff they remember.
Totally.
And it's
And
amazing. It's amazing. The response is just crazy because I'll look out there and I'll be like, wow, this person never moves, never talks, never has much of a reaction. They're in their 80s, their 90s, whatever. You don't get a rise out of them with much, but the music does it.
this. I mean, we all know this. We all know our relationship to music. Immediately, a particular song can take us back to an age that when we were 7 years old,
Yep.
when we were 12 years old. And that's all we know, the magic of music.
Yeah.
But we know what it does for people. I think that us going to play for those people, we could play our music, but we could play things that are more presentable to that particular crowd.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it would still touch them because they would find the relationships to music that they do know. Because Anthony is just a quality player. He's going to play music they're going to hear, Les Paul or whoever in him.
Right. Now I usually throw a couple subjective questions in here, and I get the feeling you being a pretty definitive guy, and like knowing the stuff that you like and don't like, won't have any problem with these questions. But for you, and this could be any genre of music, who would be your Mount Rushmore of all time musical artists for that mean the most to you?
I mean, Hendrix comes to mind first, of course.
Okay.
For me.
Yeah, he belongs on any Mount Rushmore.
But then Sonny Chirac, I mean, another guitar player, for sure. But Sun Ra is enormous for me. That's just something beyond comprehension. But I really love Thelonious Monk and Ornette Coleman, and I mean it's just gotten out of control.
We got to chisel more faces on the mountain for you.
There's too many people now. There's really music that I just find so amazing to me that it just doesn't come down to one thing anymore. Everyone's kind of riffing off like the things Miles Davis has done. It's pretty wild the amount of ground he covered, and at the same time, that's not the first name that comes off of my tongue. Right. But I know that those people are masters. Charles Mingus and Duke Ellington. I mean, these are people that we should regard like any classical composer that's been known for centuries. Right. We should regard those people because they figured out not only all the classical shit, but they fucking wrote jazz out of it. And the people who did the bebop stuff, these people are geniuses, and they were treated like fucking garbage,
Yeah, they were, and I'm glad we opened up the interview like when you were out of the gate, kind of talking about a lot of the soul music, because I've been really going down that rabbit hole lately. And I primarily am a rock and metal and punk rock guy myself, man. But I've really been going down that soul music. Like you brought up Otis Redding at the beginning, and I've just been really going down that rabbit hole and just really realizing how great the old adage is always you end up listening to your parents' music. And I used to laugh at my father's music back in the day when he's playing that Motown stuff, and now I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, there's probably some need to understand it. Yeah, and that's probably what makes you, because you want to understand your parents. You want to really, and of course, as you get older and you become a parent or something, you might even need to do that more. But it is just, I mean, that's just such well constructed music. Yeah, you just kind of can't deny it. And at some point, if you're human, you've just got to appreciate fucking soul. Like if you haven't discovered, Irma Thomas, the New Orleans woman, like there's some music by her that's just like, what in the fuck is happening? Yeah.
It's like these people's voices were just touched by an angel, It means Incredible.
Totally. And Nina Simone is that way for me.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there's just, they're just conveying something that you can't really put your finger on why and all that, because it's just coming from such a specific place, but yeah.
Now I want to ask you more like about the bass lessons. When did you start doing that? And obviously I know my mom was a teacher, school teacher, but teaching is not necessarily for everybody. How did you find out that you had the ability to teach and the patience that is required to teach? Did you always feel like you wanted to go in that direction?
Well, I didn't really know, and I was afraid to do it, but COVID came, and I had a job at a box office selling tickets for shows in DC.
Yep.
And I lost that job, and I needed to pay the rent. I needed to work.
Yeah.
And my partner was like, you better do those online lessons we've talked about that I said you should do, and sometimes that's why you're with somebody, because they know you better than you do.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely correct. I mean, and I'm able to tour, I make some royalty money, and I work daily at teaching because I married someone who was smart enough to be able to tell me that. Yeah. So they really pointed that out to me. So I didn't know, because I'm not the most outgoing person, but one-on-one, I think I do well.
Yeah.
And so that helps. And then the other thing is that I've always hated the fact that people sort of withhold information.
Yeah.
Like, this about the guitar and you're not telling me? Like, what the fuck's up with that?
Yeah.
And so I think I secretly love being able to give people information.
Yeah, you want to spawn great bass players. That's exciting.
I think so. I really took to it in a way, but I've also learned a lot about teaching while I'm teaching. I've learned a lot about teaching theory, but I had to learn it in order to teach it. So it was really like a necessity thing. And I had a lot of students because everyone was trapped. And I couldn't say no, because I was like, what if they, don't come back anymore, And so I was teaching like 30 people a week for months, It was like I couldn't see straight for months,
Yeah.
And it just is a very rewarding thing. And some people like literally get together to talk. Some people just want to talk. And some people, especially during COVID, a lot of people, they enjoyed the psychology part of it, because I'll talk about, like we mentioned earlier, about vibration and bass, and it's quantum physics. I mean, there's definitely shamanism, quantum physics, music. There's a
lot at work there. Yeah. There's a lot at play there. Yeah.
I think it's all very interesting to talk about why we play music. I know why I have to do it. And it's because of the number of the things we've talked about. And I understand that why I'm doing it,
Yeah.
And it's important to know what's motivating you and why you keep doing it, because taking you away from your family and people you love and stuff, you got to like work it out. Like, why am I doing this? It's insane.
Right. I know, like people that play music for a living will just like, it's like they'll kiss the wife and the kids goodbye and they go off for 6 months,
Right. And you want your relationship to stay together,
Yeah.
Early on, it was like I was just used to coming home, and of course you want to break up with me. I keep fucking going away.
Right. Right.
What could you say? So it was horrible,
Have bass will travel. Yeah. Now, my other subjective question is, if I were to take Joe Lally, drop him on a desert island, and he can only take one album with him, what would be the desert island album? Gun to the head, you can only take one.
I don't know, but I hope I can eat it, because I'm not sure how I'm going to live on this island.
Yeah, that's true too. And I guess essentially this is going to be the soundtrack to your death. So I guess choose wisely. I mean,
literally one album, boy. Yeah, that's a tough one. If I had like someone's whole catalog,
okay. I have given in on this question a lot. So take someone's whole discography. Who would the artist be?
I would say Sun Ra, because you get such a huge discography, and you just get such a variety of music. But yeah, that's a tough one. Even if I think of like their whole output, But yeah, it's. Who knows? I mean, it's funny, because if you know music really well, do you really want to be trapped on an island with just the music that you know so well?
Yeah, that's
maybe I need all of Duke Ellington's output so I can finally get to know it all.
Or maybe there's a day where you need Duke Ellington more than you need Sun Ra.
I know. That's the whole problem with it. But yeah, a single album, man, I don't know. But you know, albums that have always been way up there over the years that I really am intrigued to go back and listen to are like Brian Eno's first 4 solo records.
Yeah.
Like any one of those is really weird. It's just so weird that
Yeah.
someone who's not a proficient on a particular instrument was the guy who put those records into motion.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really weird music. And Tuxedo Moon Half Mute is just one of my favorite records of all time.
I'm interested in your listening trends though. When you're around the house and you're listening to music from a fan standpoint for your own enjoyment, are you somebody that kind of falls back on your old staples, or are you able to find any new bands or new music out there that excites you?
Totally. I mean, I use like the way that I got Apple Music because I teach and I need to be able to reference music very quickly.
Right.
But I used that to get into more experimental and sort of free jazz kind of music. But even the more contemporary people I've been running into at the jazz festivals we've been playing, it's really cool to get to know those artists and kind of go through their catalog, and the people playing with them brings me in touch with new people. Like, oh, who's that drummer?
Right.
And then you follow their music, and then through their music you find other guitar players, and through their music you find another saxophone player. And like, I love doing that. So I'm listening to a lot of weird shit like that. Like Tamika Reed is a great cellist who is actually she's from the DC area. And then I'm starting to play with a viola player, Jessica Pavone, and I want to create some kind of music. I'm hearing that way, and we're still trying to understand what that is. And there's a lot of that, but you know, I listen to classical music a lot because it just makes me inadvertently think about, like, I don't focus on it that much, and I'll think about melodic movement.
Yeah.
So I've been on tour before, and a guy, when when the iPod was a new thing, he was like, "What do you want me to bring?" And I was like, "Bring free jazz and classical music." Because I want total disorder and total order.
Yeah, yeah.
And so while we toured, that's all we could listen to, and it probably drove everybody crazy, but it was interesting.
Now, when you say that you hear or want to put together something, and you say you hear a cello or you hear a viola, do you hear that when you hear that in your head? How does it play out and become like a piece of music? Are you writing it down? Are you humming it into a phone? Like, I mean, does music always come to you that way? Do you hear it? Do you hear it conceptually in your head first?
Yeah, it's like the tone. It's the tone of the way bass sounds compared to the tone, for example, of a violin or a viola or cello, and it becomes very. Well, it's like a string quartet, but I don't want to write classical music like a string quartet necessarily, but I like those tones. I like that sound.
Right.
So I want to find like what other music, can be made through that. And I got into hearing Jessica Pavone through some other artist, and I found myself sitting there playing to her records. Like one record, I'd make a playlist of all her records, and then one record would end, and the next record's playing, and I'm playing to that, and I'm like, why don't I just contact this person?
Yeah.
And like, see if she wants to play. And then we started sending files to each other.
That's cool though, man. Because that's one advantage of the technology, though. I imagine that it is very useful to musicians as far as being able to create and not be in person.
Absolutely. I mean, the ability to actually make a record that a whole bunch of people are physically going to buy is gone. So I might as well at least be able to take advantage of some of this and figure out, someone I want to play music with and find them. So that helps.
Yeah. Listen, Joe, I don't want to keep you, man. I said we would do an hour, man. I appreciate you being so generous with your time. This has been a lot of fun, man. And it's been an honor to talk to you, man. And we're in touch on Facebook. Please stay in touch. I would love to have you back on again, man. This has been a real pleasure, man.
Right on. Anytime.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, man. And it was just great talking to you, man, and just talking music with you. And I get the feeling if I didn't put an end to it, I could go all night.
Okay. Well, thanks. And I actually do have a 5 o'clock that's starting now.
Yeah, I'm trying to respect that. I know you said to try to keep it to an hour, and it's all about raising up those new bass players.
That's right.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you so much, sir. Been an honor. Yes,
take care.
Good talking to you. You too. There he goes, folks. The great Joe Lally. You will probably remember him from the legendary punk rock band Fugazi. If you don't know Fugazi, just log off right now, go do your musical homework, come back and watch my podcast when you've educated yourself. One of the great bands, not only musically, Fugazi, but as I mentioned in the interview, just a band that stood their ground, drew a moral line in the sand with ticket prices, with just how they ran, that band and everything they stood for. And they really are a band that stood on business, man, dug their heels in, man, and did things their way, which I have the utmost respect for, man. And he's also doing, as we talked about, the MESSTHETICS. That is a trio where he's playing with another person, as well as Brendan Canty, also from Fugazi. What they're doing, super eclectic, original, unique, amazing, all instrumental. I encourage people to go check it out, man. Absolutely incredible, man. He also did an album with the frontman for Fugazi, Ian MacKaye, and his wife. The project was CORIKY, CORIKY, which is also an amazing album. They've only done one in 2020, but it is an incredible album, incredible harmonies, just an amazing resume of work that Joe has been involved in. So do yourself a favor, check out Fugazi. If you haven't, I don't know what rock you've been living under, but shame on you. Shame. Even the Freddie Mercury puppet is saying shame, and his hands don't even move. But in his mind, he's doing this, if you don't know Fugazi. And make sure to check out the MESSTHETICS. That's MESSTHETICS. I want to make sure I spell it right so people aren't playing this back saying, what is he saying? There, I spelled it out for you. So a huge honor to have Joe Lally on here, man. Just amazing just to talk music with him, man. A guy that is just so cerebral in his approach to music. Absolutely love it. He really is an explorer, of sound and just, just reaching, extending himself to see what's capable with music. And I always applaud that, man. I love to talk to people that are just original and unique and eclectic. So huge honor for me to get to talk to him. And Fugazi, just a band that is right in here in my heart that I absolutely love. Real pioneers, man, real trendsetters, man, trailblazers, call them what you want, man. In the words of our great American poet, Frank Sinatra, they did it their way. And it's too bad more bands haven't followed suit. I don't want to say that there have been bands that haven't tried to do it their own way, but Fugazi was really a band that dug their heels in, man, and really made shows affordable for the kids. Really sought out to make their music accessible, their shows accessible, just always putting the fans and the music first, rather than the business side and all the other things that go with being a band. Their focus was where it should be, man, and that's why I will always respect the hell out of them. And I could ramble on and on about how much I love Fugazi all day long, but I will spare you that. But go check out their music, man, and huge thank you to Joe Lally for doing the podcast, man. A huge honor to talk to him. Of course, make sure I'll get my promos in now. I can't remember if I did it before Joe got into the room, but I'll do it again anyway, and you'll suffer through it. Make sure to like and follow PodScum on Facebook, and also make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell on this channel to stay tapped in, because as you know, this is where the cool kids come to chop it up with your boy, Rexx Ruger, a.k.a. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. And let me give myself a look here at the end of this interview. Oof, the Roth quaff still in order, man. And of course, you know how I make it all happen, kids. Yes, I've got the rock star genetics. Yes, it's a no-brainer that I'm going to have these rock star godlike looks. But of course, I get a little help from my friends at Aquanet. And of course, my disclaimer, as always, is use this stuff and you will not look this damn good, because that is impossible. But you should look pretty good. And that should be good enough. I mean, don't reach too far to think that you're going to achieve this, because I am blessed with the Roth genetics. You can't chase that, and you can't recreate it from any product out of a can. So, as I always say, don't hate, just congratulate and feast your eyes on a rock star. That being said, I will end this by saying once again, thank you so much to Joe LALLY for coming on the podcast, man. Super enjoyed that conversation, man. We'll definitely chop it up with him again, man. And like I always say, when I end these things, remember to take it easy and keep it sleazy.